Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenney Baden. As you know, there is a continuation of the suppression hearing in the Robert Kraft case, the prostitution case, the video case in Florida. Mr. William Burke, on behalf of Mr. Kraft, is now questioning the health inspector who was on the stand. Well, this is some interesting examination. My guests are here. You know Julie Rendelman, who's a host here on Law&Crime. She was a deputy bureau chief in the Manhattan DA's office. And Katie Smith, who was my victim in my blood spatter experiment last week, who's tried like hundreds of cases in federal court. And I'd like to talk to you about this because this is a motion to suppress on behalf of Mr. Kraft. Now, I said before it's cross-examination because what it is, it's actually direct examination, but Mr. Kraft has to call these witnesses himself, and they are adverse witnesses. Tell me why, Katie, he can kind of cross-examine them and be contentious with them.
Well, if he's calling them in his case in chief, he is allowed to approach them as though it was someone who is hostile to him. He doesn't have to follow the normal procedure of asking direct examination questions. He can lead with cross-examination and try to get out the information that way.
Now, Julie, hostile, an interesting term here because I noticed Mr. Burke, who's one of the three main attorneys for Mr. Kraft, and by the way, we can talk about how people of wealth can actually, be more effective in the criminal justice system later. But he uses the word the government, which is something that you use in a federal court, or I use all the time. Why do you say that?
By the way, I think he's doing it because that's what he's used to doing. I think he's used to doing white-collar criminal defense, and so therefore the word government comes out much more easily than state. Remember, there's no jury here, so there's no, he's performing potentially for us.
Media here.
Yeah, but I think that honestly, I bet you, I'm confident that he's not thinking much about it and that it's simply, coming off of his tongue quite
but he uses
easily.
the word government, and she said something that was very interesting, and it was picked up on Twitter by Mr. Badcock, who's also one of the reporters covering it. He said, how many times have you been asked to go in, this time by Detective Sharp, to a place to do an inspection? And she said something, I can neither confirm or deny. What the heck is that about?
I think that she's an odd witness. Look, I think for some reason she's defensive. I don't know why she can't just simply ask the questions. Quite frankly, I think on both sides, the questions even being asked, I think he could be a little more straightforward about those questions because some of the questions he asked, kind of leave open-ended. So I think on both sides, he could make the questions a little clearer, and I think she could be answering without such defensiveness.
But Katie, are you getting the impression right now already that this was a very odd procedure? This is not normally done, okay? You're getting that impression.
Yes.
You think they had an indication that Mr. Kraft was there before they did all this?
You wonder, or if they found a pot of gold and they're trying to cover up for some poorly done shenanigans to begin with. I mean, we were discussing this last week when we were here. That
yes, we were.
This is weird. This is weird.
And we did say that the video was going to not be released to the public pending the trial. We called that one right. But now this is the suppression. This is whether or not it comes in on the trial, right?
Totally different. I mean, whether or not the public has the access to this video is a way different standard, of course, than whether or not it's legally admissible in his case. And I mean, unless we find something that was a constitutional violation along the way, I imagine it's going to come in.
Well, we'll see. We have to take a quick break. We don't want to miss anything, so that means you have to stay tuned. We'll be back quickly. Okay, this is the health inspector who supposedly inspects the nail salons. And as a matter of fact, she does sometimes. She even testified she went back there once and she inspected, Julie, the wear and tear on the tables, okay? All right, now, putting that aside, because, I mean, she should come to New York and see the wear and tear on the tables if you ever had a manicure or a pedicure. But she just said that she changed it under direct, which is really cross. It's a direct, it's kind of a modified
It's
cross.
supposed to be direct.
By William Burke, Kraft's
they're letting
attorney.
them do a lot.
She says that she changed the report, which she first did when the inspection was 11/14/2018. On 1/31/2019, she changes now to push deficiency instead of not A, because she was scared that the spa would get it and she would be in danger. Does that fly with you?
No, that aspect does not fly with me.
Why?
Well, because, look, she may have been nervous there because it's uncomfortable to be in this type of establishment when there's potentially prostitution going on. But actual fear, meaning fear that she would be attacked or physically harmed, doesn't seem to fit the narrative of what we're talking about.
Especially Katie's, when she's out, she knows the police are outside. She does this inspection at the behest, according to her own testimony, the detective Sharp. She goes there, so now but she knows something's up, right? Right? He's really, if she's going to be scared, blame him, is my feeling.
Well, there's no objective basis that I've seen that she should be in fear for her safety. It's just not there. It doesn't jive. I think right now she's trying to post-rationalize these changes that she made that were either done innocently, negligently, or from some sort of strategic reason to benefit the police that we'll find out.
Well, if the defense is correct that this was all like a setup and she really was used not as a health inspector, but really as a police informant, so to speak.
Right.
Right. Does that help the suppression hearing on behalf of Kraft, or does it matter at all?
I think it does help them. I mean, at the end of the day, the question is whether or not there were factors that went into the going before a judge to determine if there was enough evidence to go in and bring in these videos. And so if she's not credible, then therefore the facts she provided become not credible.
Well, this is kind of getting to be a real interesting hearing over a prostitution claim, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We're going to have to take a quick break. Stay tuned. She still will be on the stand, I anticipate, when we get back, and it's fascinating. Quick. Okay, so they are done on the direct examination, which is really a cross-examination because you're allowed to use ask questions in a kind of contentious way to a hostile witness. And she is, because she works for the government, as Mr. William Burke said. Katie Smith, I thought it was really interesting that at one point he asked her on her reports, what does this inspection number mean? And she didn't know. She doesn't know. Who does?
Fair point. Yeah, you have to wonder, it makes you wonder whether she's telling the truth. It also makes you wonder whether she has experience doing this, if she's competent, and whether she testifies a lot. It's hard to tell right now what that actually implicates, but it certainly seems like she's not being totally forthcoming.
So Julie Rendelman, the other thing he found interesting at the hearing, he ended on this point, and so this must be an important point to him, that in the other case where she did an amendment to a report where she also felt scared because she was working at the behest of a police, she did it that day because she said the operations manager there told her she should amend that specific day. Right. And here she waits from November 14, 2018 to January 31st, 2019 to amend the report to talk about the domicile and all. Now, what effect does that then have on whether or not this suppression should be granted?
Well, again, the judge is making a determination about the credibility of the witnesses, because the credibility of witnesses help determine whether or not that warrant was valid or not. So if the judge were to determine that she's not credible, then obviously that impacts whether or not this video at the end of the day is going to be shown to the jury during a trial.
So, Katie, on a balancing test, you know, we read in the paper since we were like this high growing up about Johns, and we didn't even know what they were, right? And they've been prosecuted, and you know, they get embarrassed because their name's in the paper for like decades. Over decades, probably before any of us were born, I hope, okay? And so here, why does the government need this salacious videotape?
I mean, listen, a video speaks volumes, right?
Oh boy, would this one, I certainly would.
It's going to talk more than I want to listen, I'll tell you that much. But I mean, honestly, you're going to get against, obviously, the testimony of the worker, right?
Right.
And she may not.
Well, she get it if she takes a deal, right?
Right. She could take a deal, she could flip on him, but a video speaks volumes. It's really hard to refute the contents of the video, or maybe you can. We haven't seen the video. It could be grainy, it could be ambiguous. Who knows how far this video goes?
Well, the cops found it pretty interesting. There's certainly everyone's fighting on the government side, as Mr. Burke says, to get this in. Now, if the sex worker, and it's ridiculous that we're spending all this time on the sex worker, right? And sex worker situations, people will say, because they think they should be legal, many will say, right? So, but let's put that aside because it's not in Florida yet at this point, and maybe not anywhere in the United States except for one certain state. If the sex worker flips, then doesn't that put her credibility in question, because then she's gotten the benefit of not being prosecuted if they dismiss the charges to go after Robert Kraft?
Well, I mean, look, an individual's credibility is always a question mark. When an individual takes a plea and takes a deal, then of course that makes it even more of a question mark for the jury. But that gives you the very reason why they need the video, because the video, as Katie said, speaks for itself. And so, you know, the video is what the prosecution is going to want, and this is why the defense is working so hard to take it out, because the jury's going to see that and have a lot of trouble understanding where a crime was not committed.
So can the suppression hearing grant the suppression conditionally, pending whether or not the trial, whether or not Kraft's attorneys attack the person who's going to come in and say, if she does come in and say that, yes, he paid me for, as I put it, a certain kind of sex? Hashtag.
Not that I'm aware of. I think either it's in or it's out. And I think the video obviously would be very helpful for the government. It's really hard to say because if the worker testifies, right? Kraft is almost put up against the wall. Either he has to testify to refute these facts, or I don't know where he's going to go if she testifies and the video's in.
Well, very, very interesting. We have to take one of our another little short breaks. When we come back, we have so much to talk about today. There was a Tiffany Moss verdict in the death penalty stage. There's Robert Kraft. There is McStout in California. Stay tuned with us only here on Law and Crime. We are back. That was Alex Spiro. All right, a lot of people pronounce it Spiro. He's an excellent defense attorney here from New York City. He is actually doing a direct examination, which is obviously sounds like a cross because it really is a cross-examination of a government witness. And he wanted to talk, Julie Rendelman, about the bomb threat. Now, my reaction to that, I had to get a bomb threat so I can put these sneak and peek cameras in so I could watch people, you know, taking their clothes off, okay? Now, when you do that, it has to be a minimal, right? I'm watching it, Julie, okay?
Yeah, no,
there has to be a minimization, right?
Yeah, well,
explain what that is.
Well, first of all, just so we're clear, when we talk about the bomb threat, it does feel, when we hear it, a bit extreme when we know that the results are misdemeanor arrests.
Right.
So I think that's the thing that sticks out in many people's minds, regardless of whether the initial issue was the human trafficking aspect.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. So I think he's scoring points with regards to that specific issue.
Well, Katie, this detective at one point says that he wanted to close the place down. Now, I can understand when you're doing a sneak and peek because you have human trafficking, but it turns out, as the prosecutor said last week, there's no evidence of human trafficking here. So is this a little over the top? I mean, we're women. We've all been to spas where we've either gotten massages or whatever, right? We've taken our clothes off. If somebody were filming me, I would say like it's a sex retribution thing, right? What would you say? Julie's putting her finger up.
Julie put her hand up for this one. Julie, do you want to?
Well, no, I think we're forgetting a couple things. There was other evidence that established there was more going on here than simply a massage. I mean, there was evidence of semen that was found in the trash. There was evidence of
too much information.
Men that were leaving the location that said that they were having sexual acts.
But Katie,
those things were prior.
There was a lot of people. They put these sneak and peek in certain rooms. They said because trafficking is not trafficking, sex is going on. A certain type of sex is going on in these rooms. But it turns out that's not the case. There's people in these rooms that went for massages. They went to get waxing, you know, where you put, you know, men with waxing. You've seen the movies about that. And they're, you know, they got videoed.
Listen, I think it's disturbing. There's always a balance, a test between individuals' personal privacy and the greater good. I mean, sometimes you need to take precautions that violate privacy in order to ensure that things are safe. That's why they go and get the warrant, and that's why we're really parsing out the specific facts of what was known at the time to get that warrant. But I agree with you. I think my instinct, and I know the prostitution is illegal, but I think there's a far reach between prostitution and a bomb threat, and it seems extreme to me.
So we're going to see, because the detective had to continue on the stand. Let's listen to what else he had to say to us about trying to basically get Robert Kraft, or prostitution, depending on what you think. So the cameras went in, and the question is, did they have enough evidence after a certain amount of time to prosecute people for a certain kind of sex? Katie, what are your thoughts here? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of objections, and the judge is basically letting Alex Spiro Mr. Kraft get everything in.
It's really hard to tell where this is going to go at this point. I mean, they're trying to flesh out exactly all the weaknesses that possibly were put in place from the fact-gathering effort to get this warrant. And I think that there's a good chance it could be suppressed. I don't know. Usually this stuff comes in, but they're doing a good job.
So Julia, I know you think this is not going to be suppressed, right?
I don't think it's going to be suppressed. Keep in mind, the judge is going to give them a lot of leeway. There's no jury there, so he's going to give them a chance to cross-examine or direct because they want to make potentially an appellate issue also if the judge rules against them. So I don't think the judge is wrong by letting him have some leeway. But I think at the end of the day it won't be. But who am I? I'm not the judge.
Yeah, so Katie, just so everyone understands, when you are a defense and you file a motion to suppress, you actually then bear the burden to show that this is illegal, unconstitutional, that there was a lying going on to the judge to sign the initial warrant, correct?
Correct.
All right, so when that happens, the defense then, you have to call the government witnesses or the state's witnesses on your case in chief. How does that feel? Because you've tried, you defended cops, you've tried civil rights cases. How does that feel when you have to have the government witnesses witnesses be your witness and get them to admit they did illegal activity.
It's great when it goes great, but it's really bad when it goes bad. I mean, listen, it's hard because obviously you can't prepare these witnesses. And I mean, in a case like this, at least for my civil cases I deal with, there's already existing testimony and depositions, so you have a lot of impeachment material. I mean, here are reports that, as we saw from the attorney, it was using that to sort of impeach the inspector. So that's a lot of fodder that you can use to fuel your examination, but man, it's tough when you don't have any control over that witness.
So one of the things that impressed me here is, and I deal with people usually that have enough resources to level the playing field in the courtroom. Here, Robert Kraft has taken the lead for basically, and other people have followed, because he has the money to hire excellent attorneys. He has the money to attack this, and this is like a misdemeanor charge here in New York. It would get what's called an ACD, or an adjournment, possibly
contemplation of dismissal, right?
Contemplation of dismissal. So doesn't that put the legal system in quite like a quandary that maybe rich people get justice, or is it just that he can level the field?
Well, I mean, we always have this issue that, rich people, can afford better attorneys, or
This I kind of like,
and so, yeah, I mean, there's that exists in our justice system, and the idea is whether or not we talk about that all the time. As to whether or not he shouldn't be able to represent himself the way he wants to. I mean, he has the money, so he has the right to do, and defend himself.
Yeah,
so.
because if he can't, then the poor person, I read that somebody in New York City, the office asked for like $5,000 and $30,000 bail for stealing like feminine hygiene products. And so there's always this issue, isn't there?
There's always this issue, and listen, the more money you have for defense, it usually shakes out better in your favor, in part because there's such a mechanism in our system to get people to take pleas. Yeah. And as Julie and I were saying, most people
no, that's okay. And so to get people to take pleas, and really, if people with money can't attack the system, then really no one can attack the system. But that's a discussion that we'll have forever and ever and ever. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.